From the Encyclopedia of Marbles, Life Forms, and Other Phenomena of Zirconia and its Environs by Professor Abdullah Nightingale. Zirconian Year, B. The standard Zirconian year is precisely 1 day shorter than the years on other continents. Time in Zirconia flows somewhat faster because of the greater incidence of dimensional hiatuses, gaining almost exactly 24 hours in a full year. This means that a Zirconian year lasts 364 days, or 8,736 hours, or 524,160 minutes, or to be absolutely precise, 31,449,600 seconds. Aha, so a Zirconian year lasted exactly 31,449,600 seconds. That was intensely interesting. These eternal, nonsensical, or belated encyclopedia articles were beginning to get on my nerves. I would have given anything to banish them from my head. I now knew how many seconds there were in a year on the Zirconian mainland. Seconds which, thanks not least to the encyclopedia, I would never see again. One moment. There are precisely 31,449,600 seconds in a Zirconian year. 31,449,600 seconds until the next tornado standstill. Approximately 3 minutes had elapsed since the last standstill, or 180 seconds. That made 31,449,600 seconds minus 180 seconds equals 31,449,420 seconds. From now on, I need only count off the seconds backwards to determine the exact time of the next tornado standstill. 31,449,419, 31,449,418, 31,449,417. The trouble was, I would have to go on counting not only for a whole year, but backwards. That would require immense concentration. I would have to count and think simultaneously. 31,449,395, 31,449,394, 31,449,393. Was it feasible? After all, I would have to sleep occasionally. No one can sleep and count backwards at the same time. It was an impossibility. Wait, though, I could take it in turns with someone. Baldwin could take over the counting shift while I slept. He was very dependable as a rule. 31,449,355, 31,449,354, 31,449,353. Counting and thinking simultaneously worked, but what about counting and speaking? I tried a little experiment with Freda's favorite poem. Impic Alps, 31,449,328. So far away, 31,449,327. Listen to 31,449,326. My sad refrain, 31,449,325. Will there ever 31,449,324 come a day? 31,449,323. When I see you, 31,449,322. All again, 31,449,321. There, it went perfectly. I hobbled downstairs to the tea room and quickly told Baldwin the sensational news. Hello, bawled 31,449,111. When? I've 31,449,110. Found a 31,449,109. Positive 31,449,108. Ility of 31,449,107. Escape 31,449,106. Ing from 31,449,105. The torn 31,449,104. 80. And so on. I told him about my plan to count backwards. He wasn't too enthusiastic. The thought of counting backwards for half all the seconds in a year didn't appeal to him. It's our 31,449,156. 1 and 31,449,055. Only chance, 31,449,054. Otherwise will, 31,449,053. Never know, 31,449,052. Exactly when, 31,449,051. The right, 31,449,050. Moment, 31,449,049 comes. It was like having numerical hiccups. Baldwin reluctantly fell in with my plan. 31,449,023. 31,449,022. 31,449,021. Drumming up support. Next, I tried to persuade the rest of Tornado City's inhabitants to escape with us. I had no trouble at all with Olsen of Oslo, Slagald Morven Jr., and Sonbor and one of the two other bold spirits, but the majority presented more of a problem. I found it too tedious to win them over individually, especially as I had to count backwards at the same time. So I convened a general meeting within an assembly hall. There I explained my plan in every detail with the aid of a large blackboard and some colored chalks borrowed from the central storage depot. It met with little enthusiasm. The inhabitants of Tornado City had become unaccustomed to changes in their daily routine, adventurous schemes, and above all, physical exertion. It wasn't easy to do the necessary spade work. My presentation evoked agitated murmurs, and there were even a few cries of balderdash, youthful impetuosity, and the like. Why should we escape at all? Why escape from paradise? Was one of the counter-arguments. We've got all we need. Enough to eat and drink, good books to read, eternal life, or as good as. Many of the inhabitants had developed the mentality of long-term prison inmates. They were afraid of freedom, of the world outside, of an unregulated mode of existence. Who's to guarantee we'll regain our youth if we go through the tornado wall? Cried someone else. We could age still more. We might even die in the attempt. I had arguments to refute. A hard argument to refute. In here I may have another 20,000 years ahead of me, probably far more. Outside 50 at most, if your rejuvenation idea works at all. And you call that a good plan? I fudged a bit, blathering about free will and readiness to take risks, fresh air, and good eyesight, and tried to remember to count at the same time. All in all, it wasn't a very convincing performance. Do you want to end up like Fonzatar Huxo? Called an old man. Why, what's wrong with me? Demanded Fonzatar, who had been venturing out into society for some time and was actually present at the meeting. He didn't understand the question. Many of my audience simply rose and walked out. They were the ones who would never be convinced, not even after a year. The rest, or some of the 3/4 of the tornado's population, remained seated and were at last prepared to discuss the matter. They included those who hadn't been in the tornado very long, so could hope that their friends and relations were still alive, and those who, even at ripe old age, had preserved their exceptional spirit of adventure. 15,678,978, 15,678,977, 15,678,976. 6 months went by. In the meantime, a split had developed between the 30% who were still prepared to escape and the remaining 70% who had disassociated themselves from us, possibly for fear of becoming infected with our foolhardy stupidity. We escapers held regular meetings at the tea room and made strategic preparations for our exit from the tornado. First came the theoretical part. We ran daily checks on the number of seconds left, drew sketch maps of the tornado, and calculated the strength and height of its walls. We also explored its nether regions for the most favorable jumping-off point. We settled on a spot where the wall seemed comparatively thin and would be about 6 feet from the ground when the tornado came to a standstill. 13,478,333, 13,478,332, 13,478,331. Daily workouts. We also prepared ourselves physically for our escape attempt throughout the year. All of us were in very poor shape, this being a product not only of old age, but of our comfortable way of life inside the tornado. With its ample diet and limited opportunities for exercise. After all, why keep fit when you're more or less live forever? Escaping entailed physical exertion, however, when we would have to burrow through the wall at top speed, jump clear, fall a few feet, land successfully, sprint off at once before the tornado really got going again. Our bones, muscles, and sinews would become rejuvenated during the escape, so we hoped. But our reflexes had to work as well. Accordingly, we introduced a daily workout, ridiculed by the tornado dwellers who had decided to stay. We began every day with a session on the stairs, 1 step down, 1 step up, then 10 minutes rest. 9,345,436, 9,345,435, 9,345,434. Next came 50 press-ups in succession. This, of course, entailed a certain amount of prior training. 8,905,778, 8,905,777, 8,905,776. Knee bends for the calf and thigh muscles, 100 a day. 7,670,886, 7,670,885, 7,670,884. More step-ups on the stairs, followed by half an hour's yoga for purposes of relaxation. Then a round of staircase golf to pass the time. 6,567,113, 6,567,112, 6,567,111. Chin-ups. 5,654,336, 5,654,335, 5,654,334. Sit-ups. 4,111,699, 4,111,698, 4,111,697. Shadowboxing. 3,458,224, 3,458,223, 3,458,222. Skipping. 2,444,679, 2,444,678, 2,444,677. Bending from the waist. 1,343,667, 1,343,666, 1,343,665. One last session of step-ups on the stairs, then off to bed. And so it went day after day for almost a whole year. We were the fittest centenarians that ever inhabited a perpetual motion tornado. The great day was drawing near. We spent the last month sharing out our belongings among the rest of the tornado's inmates. I offered my handwritten account of their life stories to Fonzatar. No thanks, he said. I'd sooner come with you. Really, after all that happened to you the last time we tried to get through the wall? I've thought it over, he replied. I've lost my wits. Maybe I'll get them back. What have I got to lose? 86,400, 86,399, 86,398. The last day came. None of us had slept 2 nights. Another 2 tornado inmates had changed their minds like Fonzatar and had to be toughened up with the aid of a crash course. The ones who were staying behind threw a touching farewell party, complete with homemade cakes and hand-painted banners. Lots of luck, happy landings, you suckers, etc. Many tearful farewells were exchanged by old friends. The word really meant something in there. Solemn speeches were delivered and old times invoked. In fact, I hoped it would all soon be over before a few more of us decided to stay in the tornado for sentimentality's sake. Then we made our way down into the bowels of the tornado. 65,524, 65,523, 65,522. It was undoubtedly the longest day of my lives to date, even though I was spending it in a place where time didn't exist. As each separate second went by, another drop of sweat trickled down my fur. 12,345, 12,344, 12,343. Final limbering up exercises. 1,432, 1,431, 1,430. All of a sudden, terrible misgivings overcame me. There wasn't a scrap of proof that my plan would really work. I was taking us all to perdition. 233, 232, 231. Only another 4 minutes. I could still call the whole thing off. 120, 119, 118. 2 minutes. What if we all ended up like Fonzator Huxo, a tornado full of demented old men? I decided to abort the operation, or better not. 60, 59, 58. Into the last minute, I decided to escape after all. 20, 19, 18. Call it off. 14, 13, 12. Escape. 10, 9. Call it off. 7, 6. Escape. 5, 4. Call it off. 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay, let's do it. The moment of truth. The tornado ground to a halt. We had precisely 1 minute in which to get out of our perambulating prison. 20 men burrowed into the wall at a time, each group starting at 10-second intervals. Baldwin and I were in the last batch. Everything went according to plan. After 50 seconds, nearly all of us were outside. Another 10 seconds. Baldwin and I and the others plunged headfirst into the debris. No unpleasant sensations, no hallucinations. An agreeable, euphoric feeling overcame me as I burrowed through the wall. I could feel my muscles grow taut and leaden sensation and my legs disappear. I crawled along, thrusting the sand and pebbles vigorously aside and taking care not to get any of the muck in my mouth. My paw broke through, then my head, and I caught my first glimpse of the sky. The desert floor was some 9 feet below me. I simply let myself fall, landing rather clumsily on my backside, but got up at once and started to run for it. The rest had already taken to their heels. They sprinted off in all directions, making for the shelter of some rocks. With a creaking, grinding sound, the tornado got under way again. I couldn't resist the temptation to look back. After all, how often do you get a chance to see a tornado at a standstill? It looked like a rent in the sky, like a mountain-rammed summit fizzed into the ground. The creaking sound became a rumble, and a man-sized boulder buried itself in the sand beside me. I turned and sprinted towards a small dune. How supple my limbs were, how strong. I performed a flying somersault over the dune and cowered down behind it. With a roar, the tornado resumed its progress. More boulders came hurtling over our heads. Desert dust swirled around. Bewildered scorpions and sand snakes flew through the air. The tornado stormed off, bellowing like a wild beast, and receded into the distance. We stood around for a long time, marveling at our youthful faces, congratulating each other at our appearance, exchanging pats on the back. One of us had brought a little mirror along, and we all competed for the sight of it. Then we went our separate ways. He saw Moers went in search of death. He'd heard tell of a lake of acid on Paul Island that could even dissolve hardened steel. So God's destination was Harvest Home Plain, because I had told him about my encounter with the Balog. He proposed to wait there until a specimen with a head passed by. Bonzatar Huxo seemed quite lucid. He was not only rejuvenated, but right in the head again. What puzzled me most, however, was the baby in his arms. "This is Olsen of Oslo," he said, rocking the infant as he spoke. "We forgot he was the only one to preserve his youth after entering the tornado. Passing through the wall has made him even younger." Having spent a while debating who should look after the baby, we eventually entrusted it to Bonzatar, who was mad about the idea, so Olsen's life began again from scratch. Baldwin was very keen to visit Baysville, the home of a girl he'd always wanted to kiss. As for me, I was the only one who wanted to go to Atlantis because human beings weren't welcome there. Baldwin drew me a little map showing the quickest way to get there. Atlantis was normally accessible only by sea or air because the city stood on a peninsula cut off by the impassable humongous mountains, but Baldwin knew of a shortcut. It was probably the most unusual shortcut in Zamonia, or rather, if there had been a head of parade for unusual shortcuts, Baldwin's would definitely have topped the charts. After a 3-day trek on foot across the Demerara Desert, I reached its outlying dunes. I turned for a last look at the sea of brown sugar and thought back on the life I'd spent there. Having silently wished the mugs, phantoms, and tornado dwellers and the ex-tornado dwellers all the luck in the world, I climbed the final slope. On reaching the crest, I was confronted by what was probably the most astounding view in Zamonia. 2 or 3 miles away loomed a mountain range composed of blue-black pyrite crystal. It was totally unsuitable for climbing. The mountainsides were so smooth that one would have needed suction cups to scale them, and the edges were sharp enough to bisect an elephant. But the most astonishing feature was something else. Running through the center of the range was an immense cleft, and in that cleft reposed a head some 20 miles in diameter.